And thank you so much for being here. This is our first official launch of Heavenly Insights with the Hayes teachers.
Nice.
I'm Temple Hayes.
And I'm Mary Hayes.
And we found each other on life's journey a few years ago, though we've known of each other probably even prior to that. And we just decided to put our energies together. So, what we're doing today is we're doing one program. We're talking about life, we're talking about death, we're talking about the afterlife, we're talking about how nobody rests in peace. And we're talking about don't die while you're living. So, based upon your interest and sharing this message, then we'll decide if we keep doing it. I'm just putting it out there. You're the ones that's calling the shots. But Mary and I, we have the gift of gab and we learn from each other all
That's
the
true.
time. So,
That's very
just to paint a story real quick, I got Mary's name from someone in Florida,
true.
and I thought that I heard that Mary was a career coach or she was a career intuitive. That's what I heard. I'm not implying anyone said that. That's what I heard. And so I got in touch with her and she went, "Oh, it's going to be a few months." And I thought, "Oh, okay, so let's say it was October, November." She's so busy with clients. She was saying it would be February. So anyway, February comes, and in the meantime, in January, my mother died.
Mm.
And though death is expected, none of us, me and my brothers and our families, we weren't ready for that for sure. So I'm on this Zoom call with Mary, and I tell her, "Mary, I just want you to know I'm vulnerable, wobbly. And if you start talking to me about something related to your intuition and I start crying,
Mm.
it's probably not about what you're saying. I'm just real tender about my mom and I'm okay with that. But I just didn't want you to be shocked if I start squalling." And she said, "Oh, your mom's already in the room." And the rest is history.
That's
We
right.
just we just bonded. And would you please tell individuals why this interests you and how you got into this? I know your story, but I want you to tell it.
Right. Okay, I'd be honored to. So yes, I say from this point in time, in this perspective, that I'm a self-taught medium. It wasn't something I was trained to do, and it wasn't something that was on my bucket list or my intention, my goals. But I knew early on I wanted to help people, and it was the death of my mother that put me on this journey. I was a very young and very tender, there's your word, but very tender, very innocent teenager, just very naive, and had been raised in traditional Christian church. And when my mother passed, it was very tragic. And I remember asking the minister at our church, who had known our family for a long time, and I sang in the choir, my mom was in the choir, youth group, we were very involved. And I asked him, did he think my mom was okay? And I hear this so much in my avocation. People ask me all the time, are they all right? Are they happy?
Hmm.
Are they at peace? I hear this all the time as a medium. And the minister literally looked at me. It was just the two of us in the hallway. I was there helping plan her funeral. And he said to me, well, I don't think she went to heaven. I was gutted. And I was such a shy child at the time. But I remember just standing there and going, how can that be true? My mom had some issues, but she was one of the most beautiful souls. She was very conscious. She studied yoga. She was a Montessori teacher. She was a Girl Scout leader. She was a good mother. She just struggled with depression. And I just remember thinking, that can't be true. You've taught me that God, your concept of God, is all forgiving and all loving. And that one sentence changed the course of my life. And I literally said a prayer
Wow.
the very next day at her funeral that good would come out of that tragic death. now I kind of joke about it, and I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way. It's like, be careful what you pray for because I didn't intend to become a medium. And it's not always the easiest thing to do because I'm literally dealing with death. I'm dealing with parents that have lost a child to suicide or overdoses or car accidents, and some deaths that are anticipated, but it's still a loss, whether that's a parent or a grandparent. It's still a challenge for most people to really know in the deepest place in their heart, are their loved ones doing well on the other side? So it's an honor to do the work that I do, to help bring comfort to those that are still wondering that question. And I'll just say one more thing, Temple. I fully believe that we all go into the light. I wasn't raised to believe that. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that. I believe we will have a life review where we have to assess how did we do in our lives. So it isn't like, oh, just magic wonderland. I think there's a time of review and assessment, but I still believe we will all go to a good place. And so that brings me a lot of comfort. And I know it's brought a lot of comfort to my clients through the years.
Yes, and I also remember, and it makes you just want to take that preacher out into the barn and smack him with the love smack, like
I plan to have words with him when I
you
get to
know,
the other
the
side.
the
I'm gonna,
Christ consciousness within me wants to
that's right.
smack the heck out of you,
Thank you very
and
much.
sadly, there's no telling how many people, as he was playing God, that he has affected in such a negative
Negative
way,
way.
and I would
Yeah,
say that you are the rare one,
yeah,
that your soul knew there was something within you that was called forth to greater. So many children, so many young people, so many people in general are scarred
yes,
from
yeah,
stupid statements
yes,
that, no one needs to say. But I also recall you telling me, because I was so intrigued by you and, what you do and all of that, and that you're a Hayes and we're sisters.
that's right.
I, I was so intrigued when you said that that same person, I won't say preacher, that same person said to you that God needed your mother more than you did. And here you are, just a just a teenager, and how all that sits. And I think that, that's when you and I were talking about heavenly insights, and it's just organic, talking one day, catching up, and it's like, well, let's just, get online, get on social, not have an agenda, not having a
Right,
script, which I don't
right,
ever do either, and I know you don't, but let's just flow. And
right.
one of the things that is so important, and it is so hard. I remember like 20 years ago when I was doing chaplain back in the day when I would do chaplain training.
Right.
And at the time, we had 20, 25 chaplains. And
Wow.
we were talking about, right words at the right time. And I was giving them examples of like when they are holding sacred space, or when someone dies or there's a tragic accident. And they asked me, it was like it got real quiet. And they said, well, Reverend Temple, what do you say?
Mhm,
And I said, I make eye contact. I feel the space of the person.
mhm.
And I look at them and I say, I have no words.
That's
And
ex
they giggled.
Yep.
You have no word. What? You're sitting there and you say, I have no words. And I said, I say, I have no words. And years later, I would hear some of them in the sanctuary, and somebody must be telling them, that something tragic would happen, and they'd say, I have no words. And the other part that just really gets me is when somebody says, I know how you feel. You no, you don't. You
No.
you don't know how I feel.
Yeah,
You don't know my journey. You
yeah,
don't know my karma. You don't know my past life. There's
right,
no way you would know how I would feel. There's no way I know how you feel.
right,
And so I like to use the language of, I have no idea how you feel.
right,
I feel for you.
right,
I
right.
feel for you. And I pass to you, Mary Hayes.
That's so well said. When someone says, I know how you feel, or I went through something similar to you. We all,
Hmm.
our journey through death and loss, to me, is always a unique journey, and it can be scary, and it can be lonely. And what others can do, whether that's in a role of a chaplain or a next door neighbor or a well-intended friend, just say, I'm here for you if you need something. I know sometimes I'll say, I can't even imagine how hard this is for
Hmm.
you. So it's
Hmm.
the same kind of thing as, like, I don't have words. I'll let them know. They can feel that I'm empathizing with them, instead of identifying with them, I'm empathizing with them. I can only imagine how hard this is for you. So I have found people can feel the good intentions of those words without us
Hmm.
trying to say too much. Because so often people are either completely don't know what to say, so they might avoid even discussing the subject, or they talk too much about it, like, oh yeah, well, my grandfather died. And the other person, if they're steeped in grief, they don't really want to hear about someone else's death maybe at that time. So to me, like you spoke to, Temple, less is more.
Hmm.
But coming from a place of sincerity and heartfelt truth, like, I'm here for you if you need something. Even this is one more thing I'd love to add on. Saying to someone, how are you doing? It can be very exhausting when someone's in the grief process, whether you run into them at the grocery store or something. They're trying to get by, they're trying to do okay, whether they're out in public or not. But chances are they're not doing great, but they don't want to have to tell everybody that. So again, instead of asking that as a question, just say, I hope you're holding up fairly well. Like, give them a hope, send
Hmm.
them a blessing, but rather than set it up as a question that requires an answer and then puts them it puts them in the spot, and sometimes that's awkward or uncomfortable. I'll just say to them, I've been thinking about you, instead of saying, how are you?
That's really good. Well, I feel, in our humanity, we often think um, that words are the great healer, and I would take that on. What I would say is words out from the person that's in pain, words out multiplies, disperses. So words out
Mm-hmm.
is healing.
Mm-hmm.
Words in, not necessarily coming from some idea or something. I mean, if the world was, I don't want to imply that the world is broken,
Right.
but within the areas that there is brokenness,
Right.
and that's for sure.
Right.
If words were the answer, it wouldn't be broken. So that's part of the
Well said.
practice,
Speaking
right?
of words, that was well said.
That's part of the heavenly insight that, through the years of doing, you've been doing this work dedicated in one area. I've had work in that area in others.
Right.
And so I would say that here, sitting here in this group, you're really the expert in the field, and that's great.
Thank
However, in the space of that, um, I like to hold a container so somebody can have words out and
Right.
share
Right.
out, because that means they're having an awareness, they're having an aha moment, they're having, some kind of connection.
Right.
And it really it means a lot.
Oh, it does.
It
If
does.
we can hold space for someone and create the opportunity for them to talk without insisting that they do. So you can just, if there's anything I can do for you, or if there's anything you'd like to talk about, you can just let me know. And that way they can let you know without saying, do you want to talk? Do you need help?
Yeah.
So it sounds small, but in that moment when someone, like you said, with your own mother's death, there's such tenderness, there's such rawness, that it doesn't take much to push someone into a lesser space of well-being, and our intention is to help them feel more peace and more comfort and more support. So those little sentences, those little nuances of words can make a big difference to someone. And again, if someone doesn't know what to say, just say, I'm thinking about you, or I'm sending you blessings, or I'm here for you. Less is
Mm,
more in those kind of circumstances, almost always.
that's beautiful. Well, when I was on the, call with you, my mom, she just came in.
She popped in.
And then months later, I called you and I said, "I'm gonna tell you a story that I doubt you've ever heard before, and if there's time, I'll share that." But that being said, do you have, um, like I've done, and it's so rare, I just wanna say that, but I've done soul retrieval on someone that's so shut down, consciously or unconsciously, so shielded, I don't see anything.
Wow.
And with most people, I see so many things, I'm like, "Oh, I gotta remember this and that and this," bringing energy back into a person's body. Have you had a time, that you're seeking for the person in the other dimension to come through and they don't? Or did they always come through? I've
It,
always wanted to ask that
well,
question.
I love this question. Let me I said on the front end that I'm self-taught, and truthfully, the gift showed up. I said I wanted to be in service, and like yourself, it's like we open ourselves up to what is that supposed to look like. And so my mediumship abilities really showed up organically. When I started working with clients very quietly, real hush hush on the side, because
Mhm,
I didn't want people to think I'd gone to the dark side or I turned into a weirdo or something, but real quietly with clients, their loved ones always came in. And I will say this to you, if I'd had one traditional formal training, my understanding is, because now I've exposed myself to some of the best teachers in the world, mostly just observing their style rather than being as a student to them. Had I had one lesson, I probably most likely would have been told, you can't guarantee who's going to come in. I
mm,
didn't know that. I went into it innocently and I'm like, you want to hear from your grandmother? Let's invite her in. And I've never, and it's over 25 years, I'm quit doing the math at 25. I've never had anyone not come in. And I
wow,
challenged that myself. Like, is it really? And I don't think it's because I'm all that good. I think our loved ones on the other side want connection. I think they want to bring us the reassurance and the evidence that they're doing well. And I'll just add to this one thing. I've had individuals through the years, fortunately for their sake, not too many, that have had very hurtful situations. For example, without going deep into it, unless you want to explore that, children that parents did unthinkable things to them,
mhm,
inappropriate, very deeply, like you said, very wounding things. And they want some understanding, they want some closure. And I believe coming in from the other side, they're always honest. I call it this perfected soul state. So they always
wow,
have to be honest in the light. So if they're asked questions, there's no dodging, there's no betrayal, there's no dishonesty. Even those individuals, when they're invited in, will come in. But what's fascinating about it is they're not as close. If someone's like, oh, I think about grandma all the time, I can tell where that grandmother shows up in perspective, how often they think about them, not day to day, but is it a
right,
frequent thing? Do they sense them around them? But when it's someone that's done hurtful and they just want some clarity or some moving toward closure, they have always come in, but it's almost like they're across the street distance. But part of me just, like I said, I've never witnessed someone not coming in, but I also know if it's going to help, if it's going to help toward healing and comfort, they kind of owe that to them also. And I think at a soul
mm,
level, they know that. So I've never had anyone not show up. And I think
wow.
it can be true for anyone. So again, I don't think it's just because of me or my
Oh,
expectations or,
let's don't downplay it now. Uh-uh.
well,
No, because and it doesn't surprise me because, you you channel, I mean, I do think that in these human suits, and I learned this lesson because
mhm,
used to years ago people would come up and say thank you for that or thank you for this, and I would go, it's spirit,
mhm,
you don't need to thank me.
Hmm.
But I realize that people do. They need to thank something they can
It's true.
talk to or touch or,
It's true.
whatever.
Something
And I
tangible.
would
Mhm.
right, something tangible, and I would say that I'm not surprised because you are so little ego. I don't teach,
Aw,
don't have an ego. I think we all that's our connection to life itself. There's an ego like
right.
esteem. There's self-esteem and being in the joy that
Yes.
we are created and immersed in that beautiful light and loving energy.
Right.
I am also mindful it's a we,
Yes.
you know.
It is.
That but that energy is that's pretty fascinating. And so, will children describe some of the things that's happened to them, or do you see it? That must be very
Oh,
hard.
so you mean if I invite in a deceased child from the other
Yeah,
side?
and that you had made a reference to and their parents had hurt them and done some really bad things. Yes.
Oh, I see. So let me maybe there's a little misunderstanding. So let's say I have because this has happened a handful of times, an adult woman
Okay.
whose father did inappropriate things when she was a child.
Got it.
And then
Okay.
the father's invited
Got it. Okay.
to
Wow.
fess up and answer to, and I'll tell you, almost all, I mean, that's a whole topic in and of itself, but almost all of them come away with some healing.
Mm.
They want an opportunity to go, "How could you?"
Yeah.
And because the soul is honest, and I believe the soul is that part of us that leaves at the time of death, right? I mean, hospice,
Sure.
there's been, it's witnessed that the body stays behind and the soul is what is released. So in that perfected soul state, again, they have to be honest, they have to be forthcoming. And to hear from someone who's been a perpetrator or whatever, why they would have done it. And they can never be cocky. They can never be like, well, I didn't mean it was gonna. They have
Mhm.
to know
Yeah.
whether it's something of that more serious nature or just an innocent white lie or whatever. I believe from the other side that that soul they will have to look at during their life review how it felt to the other person, their actions. So what's beautiful
Mm.
about that is if someone's done a lot of good in their life, you've done a lot of good in your life. You've trained people, you've uplifted people, you've inspired people. When it's time for your life review, you're going to get to go, wow, I did all that. And again, it's not ego, but it's that
No.
sense of like, look, I
No.
lived with purpose. I live with intention. I help bring light and love and good into the world. Conversely, if someone has done some bad things. We often think like, well, it's not fair. They get to go to heaven. I've had people go, well, they should be punished. But in feeling how their negativity has impacted someone, like literally they have to feel the hurt, that's punishment enough. They that and from that place, and I believe the soul can grow and evolve. So
Mm.
when it's being addressed something of a more serious nature, I've had individuals that were raised by an alcoholic parent and they have to see how that has impacted the rest of that child's life, some of the repercussions of that, so they have to see how it plays out. And again, I don't see it as a punishment but as an opportunity to empathize, to understand, and to evolve beyond that limited place.
Mm. Well, you and I have shared so many stories through the years. I don't think I told you this story. Um, so I part of my whole karma in this lifetime is to embrace death, understand
Mhm,
death,
mhm,
um, and then my work became not dying while I'm living,
mhm.
and the energy of life and blah blah. But that being said, all my great grandparents were alive, and all my grandparents are alive. All my
Wow,
great uncles, great aunts. I mean, a
that's so rare. Yeah.
church of people. And by the time I was 40, I took a chaplain program at a hospital, and we went around the room, and I was like one of the last to go, and there were people there that were 50 and never had anybody die, and I'm like, "I did not have anybody die," and they came to me, and I went, We don't have enough time." I mean,
Wow.
I can't tell you little, young cousin drowning and this one getting killed at 17 and that one and this and that one and that one. But one of the funniest was my grandmother Lois. My grandmother Lois Hayes married to John Temple Hayes, and I went from being one of her, the lights of her life to
Oh,
being this discovered gay girl that's told by her at 13 and a half, I'm not going to heaven and she's sorry, I'm going to spend my life in hell. And
oh
she never
gosh.
really looked at me the same again. And anyway, so along the way, she died, and I mean, I remained in her life,
Mhm. Sure.
and I realized that her beliefs were stronger than her love, and so there was
Well
that.
said.
And I
Well
really
said.
believed that. I really believed that, and I could sit with that. It was what it was. That being said, though, so my grandmother died. Let's say it was in 1994, and so I'm launching a book in 2014. So when I would go and talk to a psychic, because I've been doing this forever, I believe in it. It's important to me. It's a check-in point.
Mhm.
Um, it's a it's makes your world expansive and that kind of stuff. But always my grandmother Ruby would come through. Never did my grandmother Lois come through. So I'm talking to this psychic and it's not really about it's not like when I come to you and let's talk about this one and this one's crossed over and that. It's just a general
Right.
thing.
Right.
And she says, "Oh, so it's 2014 and my book is getting ready to come out." And she goes, "Oh, your grandmother's here." I said, "Oh, I know.
Right.
She comes every time just about. That's Ruby. Love her, my mom's mom." She goes, "Oh, no. No, this is the other one." I said, "Lois?" She said, "Yeah, it's Lois. And Lois wants me to tell you that you were right and that she's really sorry and she really is
Mhm.
amazed or touched by or whatever the words were. It's been a minute. Whatever the
Yeah,
words were, she was loving
I love
observing
it.
me.
I love it.
Okay. So I went, well, that isn't that great? And what was beautiful about it, my next thought was, and what I said is, I'm happy for her because by that time, the inner integrated work I was required to do, I didn't need her approval. And so I
Absolutely.
went, I'm so happy for her.
Her.
So anyway, we hang up and so I'm calling the woman that's editing my book, the literary agent, and how's it going? I said, well, this is amazing. I said, and out of the blue, I got this gift. And my grandmother, she went, oh, I'm right, and all that. And I went, wait a minute. She's a Southern woman and she doesn't want to be printed in my
Mhm.
book
Okay.
because I had written about her in my book. And I said, it's Lois, get over it. I don't care how you're nice to me. You were going in that book. And so she was. But I just thought that was the funniest
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
that she didn't want to be in that book.
She didn't want to be outed for whatever was not the best, message about her. But you
That's
brought
right.
up a really good point because I really do believe, regardless of someone's, let's say, religious beliefs or limited beliefs, if it's not based in truth, once they get to the other side, I believe almost immediately, if not immediately, they then see through the eyes of truth.
Mm,
And so they cannot hold on to any longer limited beliefs or prejudices or judgments of that nature. My dad was the same on his deathbed. He let it be known to me in no uncertain terms that he was not happy that I was doing this kind of work. And I had pictured this loving
mm,
deathbed, like, oh, honey,
mhm.
and it wasn't who he was through life, but I thought, here's this moment where he can at least make things right or make an attempt. No. But as soon as he got to the other side, I mean, within a couple of weeks, he started knocking on my consciousness, and I may have shared this with you, but I was not happy because I thought you had a lifetime of not being a great dad. You had an opportunity at the end to have some kind of redeeming
Mhm.
statements or something loving, and he didn't do it. So when he could see then the validity of my work, because he just thought it was negative because of his beliefs, his spiritual beliefs, he thought this was evil or whatever his beliefs were, and I knew the work was good, that I was helping
Mhm.
people, then he could clearly see it on the other side. And that's what his when I finally answered the door of consciousness, all right, Dad, all right. He goes, you can hear me. And I said, yes. He goes, what you're doing is helping people. And I said, yes, Dad, that's right. And I, like you, Temple, I thought, I'm glad you see that now,
Mhm.
because I've known that I am on the side of truth, that I am in service to, that the work I'm doing is sacred work. But it was nice to know that he got it then. So that was a gift to know, like, he gets it now. Now he's like one of my biggest fans. Like, my dad's like, you got this. And I'm like, well, thanks, Dad. And I only
Oh, I
stayed
love
mad
it.
for a little while. And then I thought, you know what? He's so sincere in his wanting to support me now in this work and his belief in me. So I only stayed mad for a little while. And now he really, it's like, it's so nice to have his loving support. And it's completely genuine coming from the other side. So this is something that can help people that have someone that doesn't understand their beliefs, but they feel like they're really aligned with their truth.
Mhm.
Once they train, we want it to happen in our lifetime or in their lifetime, but if it doesn't, we're still we can rest assured that they're gonna get it soon. I say sooner or later, so it might be later, but hopefully it's
Right.
sooner. But they will see it. We must see the truth from the other side.
That's so awesome. I,
Yeah,
I want to remind everyone, if you're tuning in currently live while we're on air, you have a question, ask it. You want to ask something of Mary
yeah.
and or me, the Hayes girls. You just come on in,
Yep.
and we'd love to welcome you. You can go and visit maryhayes.com on
.org.
her
It's .org.
website.
Mary is
Dot org.
okay.
It's
Somebody else has .com.
maryhayes.org.
You're sitting on it.
Maryhayes.org, and I'm templehayes.com. But you can visit us,
Mhm.
and I'm telling you, some of the long talks I have with Mary
Oh,
after my mother died put so much energy back into my body,
oh,
and the shock of death,
sweet.
whether anticipated or whether not, or whether we know it's going to happen,
Right.
it's irrelevant.
Loss.
There's nothing like the moment
Mhm.
that it actually happens, and
Mhm.
then the rest happens after that. And there's so many things that we can talk about, and we will if you enjoy these kind of conversations.
Right.
We're committed to getting back on and talking about. There's so much we, like why is it that people rush to get it over with after somebody's died? You
Oh,
don't have to. There's no reason to. We're not in cave time.
mm-mm.
Bodies don't smell,
Right.
um, because we have ways, and
Mhm.
all of that. And you have a voice, you have a choice, and people get caught up in the you got to do this and you got to
Right.
do that. And I remember when my shaman teacher, I was with her right after she took her last breath, and I went over and I was one of her, I was her POA, one of them, and her health surrogate, and I just I just sat there, and I called a few friends on the phone that
Sweet.
were close to her, that were her friends.
Right.
And I said, "We're here and we're holding space." And
Sweet.
we stayed till dark 30,
Lovely.
and
Lovely.
somebody said, um, "You didn't call the police?" I said, "No.
No.
Why would I call the police?" I mean, she died a natural death, and
Mm.
was I supposed to do that? Oh, well. But it was, or with my mother, it's like, telling my brothers, "I can't do this right now.
Right.
I just can't. I I need time. I need space.
Mm.
I want us to have a service that we remember.
Correct.
And if you want and I'm not trying to be in charge of the universe, and I said to both Nelson and John, if you want to do something sooner, go ahead. You
Good
know,
for
I'm not, but I don't want to.
right, good,
And they're like, sis, whatever you need,
good,
and we will wait.
good.
And it meant so much to
Yeah,
everybody because we weren't on that gerbil reel.
right.
We weren't frantic
Yeah,
and overriding all of our emotions. We were allowing.
you're allowed to feel them.
Hmm.
Life, when it's someone of consequence that passes, especially a parent and especially the mother, assuming there's been a fairly healthy relationship, it's life becomes surrealistic, whether you want to call it shock or whatever. It's just
Hmm.
everything slows down. It's just, and so to make important decisions at that time, or like you said, if you go right into having a funeral within 3 days or something, you're still so steeped in the grief and the shock and the loss that, like you said, the chances of remembering it are much less likely. And so if
Hmm.
you wait and create that celebration of life or whatever feels appropriate, but there's ample time to just feel and just lean into the grief itself, then that can be special unto itself. It's almost, I don't mean to make light of it, but it's almost like couples. I was in the wedding industry for a long time, and couples that had a big wedding and then a big honeymoon, half the time on the honeymoon, they were so exhausted they didn't enjoy the trip. The
I
couples, I have
know.
a dear friend that I married them a year ago, and they just went on their honeymoon. And she said, we had so much fun because
Hmm.
it was a trip unto itself. So
Yeah.
whether it's honoring someone in a celebration of life, a month, a year, there's no rules around it. So
Mm-mm.
like you were wise enough to say, I'm not ready. If you want to go ahead, but I need time to just be ready for what that's going to mean, and then more thought can go into it.
Oh yeah, and I would go a step further and just pull it down. I would say that when you rush death, you have prolonged grief.
There's no question.
I
If
would
there's
I
if
would
you
feel
rush
that
it,
would
you
be
deny it, it's
applicable.
so true.
Mhm,
And grief is very individualized, like I said before. And I have seen for most people and for myself, it comes in waves. But if
mhm,
we just try to compartmentalize it like, well, they passed, even if it was expected. And then we had the funeral, and then we did this and we did that. And as though it's going to be this neat and tidy process. And it isn't that way. It
mhm,
comes at times we don't expect. So if we allow for there to be grace and fluidity in how that is. I love that you shared that you just sat. I could say that you sat with the body, but to me, your dear friend, your mentor, your shaman, her essence was still very much with you. It
yeah,
wasn't like, "Poof, she's gone,
right,
gotta
right,
let her go."
right,
So her essence was still in that sacred holding space with you. And it gave everyone time, her on the other side and you and the friends that you chose to reach out
mhm,
to. It gave everyone that time to just understand and come to terms with that rather than the quick finality of it.
mhm. Yeah, and I know that you would say, and I'm sure you've heard lots of people say, if you with certain people, if you tune in and you invite a revelation to come to you in a dream state,
Mhm. Mhm.
that happens too, and that's what happened with my teacher, and she definitely was one of the most important teachers
Beautiful.
of my life and would go on record of my lifetime.
Oh, sweet.
But that being said, and it wasn't like it was always a walk in the park or that it was fun or because that's the richness of a real teacher,
A true teacher, they're gonna
kind
hold
and
you to the
unkind
fire.
and,
Mhm.
and hold you to that and,
Yeah.
blah, blah. But, I knew sh I, along with other people, knew she was dying, and I was supposed to go and meet with her about her surrendering and going into hospice.
Wow.
And I was supposed to go and meet with her on this particular day, and I get a call she's gone. And the night before, I had had this dream about
Mm.
hospice, about them coming to take her.
Wow.
And I could see the look in her eyes.
Mhm,
I could see
mhm.
her looking back at her home and her begrudgingly going in a process that she didn't want to go in. She wanted everything to
No,
be natural and
right.
alternative and all that. And and so I saw this dream and I saw the pain in her eyes.
Mhm.
So now next day I get this, she's gone. I go, I'll be over, I'll be over right away. I go over there, and so when they came and they brought the gurney and they're, we she was dressed and made pretty and all that, and my one of my friends said, "I don't know how you did it.
Mm.
I don't know how you watched them take her away." And I said, "The dream prepared me for
Good,
that.
perfect,
The
perfect.
dream prepared me for that because
Right,
this way it was natural. The
right,
other way it wasn't that it's not natural to go to hospice.
right.
I'm not
It wasn't
saying
her wish.
it
Mine
didn't feel
says
natural for
to
her.
her. It wasn't what she wanted, and so
Mm-mm.
she's, you know, to the
No.
way I that was beautiful. The way I would interpret that is her soul chose otherwise. You know, she was on her way out anyway. She was in that transition time. She just kind of sped it up a little bit so she wasn't going to have to face that hospice situation because for her it wasn't a good fit. But you're right. For
No.
many individuals, it's very beautiful process. I've heard beautiful things about hospice, but it's not for everyone.
No, no. Well, my friend is tuning in from New Zealand, and he
Uh,
said the cultural considerations are significant in some cultures. The burial is fast, but the mourning is much longer and
oh,
marked
interesting.
by milestones. People are supported. Support, like everything, takes many forms. This is a thoughtful discussion. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Oh,
I'm
that's
glad to hear that that you feel that way.
mhm,
Um, yeah, it's so significant, being in a human suit and how we do have empathy and caring for, one another and the spaces of that. It's so powerful. And um, in your work, I I imagine there's gifts in some people feeling I didn't do enough or I didn't do it right or I could have done better or the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. I bet you over the 25 years that you've been able to play a part as a catalyst
mhm.
because I know you're not going to go, I did it all by myself.
Oh, me. Nope.
But I bet you have played a
Oh my
great
gosh.
catalyst in saying they didn't want you there.
Eh,
They didn't want you there. They it was complete months ago.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Or here's something I've heard a lot. Uh, if someone doesn't make it to the deathbed, like you could have said, "Oh, I should have been there when she transitioned." They don't need them there. They don't. Sometimes they, like you're saying, they
mhm,
want privacy, and or did they do enough? I hear that so often. Maybe we if we had only if so much guilt and
mhm,
so much blame, and to have the loved one come in from the other side and validate you did enough. You did
mm,
everything. You went the extra mile. It was just my time. My body was done.
mhm,
So much comfort. I remember a young man several years ago. He was probably in his young 30s, and his brother had died, and they
mm,
were very close. But their last words, they'd had a little fight, and so the brother, it'd been like 3 or 4 years, he was eating himself up with guilt because the
yeah,
last words were kinda like, "You're a big fat jerk," whatever he said,
yeah,
and there was such a love and such a bond, they were like best friends, but they'd had just that momentary
mhm,
argument, but then the brother died, like a car
mm,
accident or something, and he never had a chance to make it right, and in an appointment with me, I was able to, 1, validate the brother's presence with personality traits. That's how I bring in validation, as I share personality traits and usually the nature of the relationship, things that haven't been revealed to me yet. Um, and then the brother was like, "Are you kidding me? That was this one time. Like the history we
Mm,
had was everything a brother would want. So don't hold on to this one little thing we had. Like that is going to sour the whole history of our relationship." And it was like, and it was a group session when this young man came, and everyone in the room could see the transformation. Like he just had the weight of the world on his shoulder.
mm.
And to have his brother come in and say, his brother was even kind of funny, like, "Don't be a jerk. Like, we were good. Like, don't hold on to that one thing you said." I was like,
Right.
"What thing?" It's just,
Mhm,
and that's what's interesting, even at a deathbed. And I say this, if someone doesn't make it in time and they're like, "I should have been there. I was at the airport." And what happens is, and I've seen this where the loved one will say, "You could have been sitting there for 2 days, but busy on your phone and not really present with me. But you're
mhm.
there, you're at the deathbed, but you're like, oh God, how much longer?" Someone can be in the room, but not be present, or they can be on their way to the room and their heart and their love is with the loved one. And the loved one knows that. So whether they're there or not, they can feel the love and the extension of blessings at a distance. So to me, that's what I've seen in this work, is that's as important to them as anything else. It's, I know you loved me, so it
Right.
doesn't matter if whether you were physically with me or not.
Wow. You know, the other aspect that's kind of flowing in for me is, when my cousin was killed in a car accident,
Mm.
at 17, I was way weirded out of being 17,
Sure,
right?
that's young.
Because
That's
I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna die when I'm 17,"
young.
you know, and only the good die young. And, of course, then through years of understanding karma and a lot of other things, then when other people close to me died, then I wouldn't, make that association.
Hmm.
Or when I, got to be my dad's age when he died, and I reminded myself we had an entirely different experience. But there
Right.
are people like Elvis Presley died same year as Gladys, his
Mm.
mother.
Oh,
Um,
that's
I've
right.
heard of that many times. Have you seen that a
Where
number of
people
times
die
where
close to each other.
people will take on when their parents died or somebody that they love died, around the same year?
Yes, I won't say I see it frequently, but
Mhm.
I think there are some patterns to be recognized in death. There's no question about that. Or a baby will be born on the anniversary of someone's death. And a lot of
Sure.
times people will think, "Oh, they're reincarnated." I don't think many souls come in that quickly. It can happen, but I don't think
Yeah.
they, but it's that continuity of life. Like we're saying goodbye to a soul, we're introducing a new soul, or
Sure.
that continuity. But yeah, sometimes it's pretty fascinating. The time someone passes might be a significant time, or the day of the year. Yes. Not, I don't see it a lot, but it's certainly there. And I want to touch on something you said moments ago about being prepared because of the dream you'd had from your
Mhm.
dear friend mentor. So I do believe our loved ones will send us all kinds of signs, sometimes in preparation for, like you were blessed to have that preparatory dream, so that when she actually transitioned, you weren't so shocked. You weren't,
Mhm.
holding on to, "Oh no, I'm not ready." Um, but I think all we have to do is let them know, whether in our thoughts or in our heart or even out loud, "I want more signs." It doesn't mean they're necessarily going to come in a dream that night, but I think we can absolutely let our loved ones know, "I want to know you're around. Please make it so clear to me that I have the confirmation and the reassurance that you're doing well and that you're
Mm.
around." And they get real creative. They'll, yeah, wasn't it your mom that was flicking lights or something?
Oh,
Did
yeah,
she,
she
yeah,
did that just a couple of weeks ago.
there you go.
She
Yeah.
was flickering those lights. Well, I was grieving her,
Mhm.
and and what happens, I feel, when a mom dies is you're born again.
Oh,
You're cutting the umbilical cord again,
right.
and so you're being born. You're
Yeah.
taking away that
Yeah.
that part energy only, you know, because
Yes,
I'll always be close to
right,
my mother.
right.
But I promised myself when my mom died that I would not get caught up in anyone else's stories or ideas. I wouldn't cheat myself. I wouldn't metaphysical it away. It
Good.
would be whatever it is, whenever it is, and you know, and I've pretty much been like that for a long time of just with losses and animal pet losses and stuff.
All of
But
it.
anyway, so I invited mom to the movies and we watched Still Magnolias.
I love it.
Because we watched that film together 13 I
I
don't
love
know, a lot, a
it.
lot, a
Mhm.
lot, and we used to laugh, so I just pretended like we were just at the
Sitting there
movies
watching it again.
together, and I could feel her little shy hand reach over towards
Aw,
mine. She used to
that's
do it kinda
sweet. That's
hesitantly, like, "Oh, I'm gonna hold your hand," and yeah, go upstairs and the lights are flickering and, you
I
know, things like that, but it
yeah.
they do show up,
Mhm.
you know, they really do show up.
Yeah,
Greg is saying that beautiful death seems to be an invitation to beyond guilt. Yes. Though
absolutely.
it takes work, it is the nudge. It's the Easter story for me. I agree. It's the
How
Easter
lovely.
story for me too. Always resurrecting
That's right.
above,
That's right.
expanding out, beyond, living. People never die,
Yeah, yeah.
you
And,
know?
it's interesting when people hold on to guilt, like, "I should have done more." Almost always the clients that I have that are afraid they didn't do enough or holding on to guilt have gone the extra, extra mile. They just, if it's time for that body to be released, it's gonna happen regardless of what good intentions. But, when I look at guilt just as an entity unto itself, no one is served by that. It
Mhm.
doesn't change the outcome, and it just gnaws away at the beingness. So to me, it's important to go, what were my intentions? Did I do my best? Was it my wish to do my best? And we have to factor in human folly, human error. We're going to
Mhm.
miss the mark sometimes, but to look back with harsh, judgmental eyes to go, well, if I'd not done that one thing, what were my intentions? Did I love that person? Did I do
Mhm.
everything I humanly could for them? Did I rise above? And that's, it's we can't, if we don't have them directly telling us, don't worry anymore, you did fine. Hopefully everyone will have an opportunity to get reassurance if they are feeling guilty. But if they look within their heart to say, did I give as best I could at that time? And the answer is yes. And then all the more reason to let themselves off the hook and say, I'm not going to hold on to guilt anymore because I love
Mm.
them. I'm grateful for what we had. I wish I could have done more, but humanly I couldn't.
Well, to me, that's why your work is so important,
Mm,
because it gives people an opportunity to put
yes.
closure
Hmm.
around things.
Yes.
And I know for sure, beyond a doubt, and I've been around a lot of people that are mediums and everything, but I praise you and the things you said to me that my mom said, only my mom and I knew. So
You.
you
Thank
know, you're a open channel and you're such a blessing, in
Thanks.
this life to me and to those other people that through the years of 25 years, the lines of people that have received that energy with you. So,
Thank you.
Mary and I want to remind all of you that if you like these kind of conversations, we'd be delighted to do them again. If you have questions or if you have some future things that you
Future
would like for
topics.
us to
Exactly.
address, we're very open. We love being together
Yes.
and, you know, the Hayes girls, and
Yeah.
we love having Andrea help us.
And we're not related. That it's just by coincidence that we have
No,
the same last name, but we love that we are have the same last name.
I
We're
think my
connected in
mom
spirit.
I think my mom made it all happen, you
I
know?
don't disagree with that.
Yeah, so, bless you, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. Mary, thank you for
Thank you. This is a
trusting this
together.
process to free flow with spirit, and Andrea Dudley, thank you for being present with us. She's our invisible person.
Aw,
She's
well,
the one that you don't see, but she helps so much. So
facilitate. Mhm.